Wait, are these your drawings?
What? No,
Oh,
no.
good.
Scooby-Doo Light of 1,000 Calms. This game is a classic third-party licensed game that the early 2000s gaming scene was known for. Companies would give their rights to their IP to a game developer to make a good old game for the kids and some quick cash for the grown-ups. At the time, these just seemed like fun games where you play as your buddy from the big screens. But as time went on, the audience for these games became older and gained access to the internet. So these games started to be looked at more critically. Some of these games look ooh, and some of these games look... Either way, these games seem to have aged to become either true classics and absolute failures. But the question is, where does that put these meddling kids? Night of 100 Frights originally came out in 2002, and a year later the game was released for a whole generation of consoles, with the PS2 version even claiming the title of Greatest Hits. But does this game really deserve this title? I mean, think about it. What do you even do for a Scooby-Doo video game? Now, before Frights, most of these Scooby games... Whoa! Oh. 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 Okay, well, anyway. Most of these games were really simple in their game design, and just had Scooby go through some sort of a corridor to reach the end of a stage that continues the story. Mostly like a point-and-click RPG kind of game. There were some platformers too, where you could clear a stage in sections and just have multiple cases in each game. Cyber Chase is kind of where things sort of connected with people. A 3D platformer going through a series of levels in distinct different locations. And at the end of each level set, there was a boss accompanying the theme as well. Maybe a little dance too? I don't know. Game's neat.
Now you're trapped. You'll never get out of here in one piece.
What made it really stand out is that it also goes along with the Cyber Chase movie, so it feels like you're playing through a Scooby-Doo episode or film. Well, with this in mind, Heavy Iron Studios really needed this game to stand out from the rest. This game needed to pop out to the public, not only to promote their new company in THQ, but also a new Scooby-Doo movie or something, I don't know. And arguably, Heavy Iron did just that. This is easily one of the most popular Scooby games, nonetheless licensed games, of all time. So let's take this game from the very beginning and go through everything to the very end to answer these questions laid out before us. Is it possible that people are looking at this game from a narrow point of view and this game is actually bad? Or is this game even better than what most people say it is? So when you boot up the game in your good old 2000s machine, first there's... Okay, now when you first boot up the game, you get to these menu screens. That's right, I said we're looking at everything. Every snack, every pixel, every route to the road to the... So bam, this title screen. I gotta say, it's pretty nice to see the faithfulness of the franchise right off the bat. Oh, the characters running in place exactly like they would in their show. The fan service seems to be here. I hope this continues throughout the game. And then there's this other menu, which is honestly pretty clean and is much more engaging than most other games. It actually feels like you're in the mystery machine and using the equipment. Now, I don't know why these guys would have CIA computers or whatever, but either way, nice presentation for starting off. Not much to say here. Well, there's nothing better to do than start the game, right? Wait! Before we start the game, I need to address the elephant in the room. And that is what kind of version of the game we're looking at here. See, because this game came out on multiple consoles and multiple regions, each of these versions have their own differences, or even like their own separate version of itself too. Some of these changes range from modified voice lines to whole assets of the game working completely different than its counterparts. I mean, take a look at what happens when you play this game on the Xbox 360. Like, the game crashes at the final boss. Are you serious? For the sake of this video and for the accuracy of what the developer's original intent was for this game, if that's really important, we'll look specifically at the NTSC PS2 version of the game. Yeehaw, that's what I'm talking about. This is the first version of the game to be released, and I don't know, this is the version everyone played on as a kid anyway. So now that we got that out of the way, let's actually start from the beginning of the game.
You smell that salty sea,
Damn. I am watching the original Scooby-Doo right now. I gotta say, all the cutscenes in this game do a really good job of acting like the original show. I mean, look at these characters. How do you make something that's 2D and make it look pretty good in 3D? Now, yeah, this game isn't beautiful or anything. I mean, look at those meat sticks. Holy shit. But overall, the art style of this game is really, really good. Already, its inspiration from the source material is pretty noticeable, and that's something I would expect from a Scooby game. I also like that this game is heavily taking inspiration specifically from the original show, since that's what most people think of when they think about Scooby. Not this or whatever, I'm sure it's fine. So yeah, ties back to the early Scooby-Doo material. It's a consistent theme, the whole game, that's awesome. Check that off the list. We're making a list. So what about the actual gameplay though? I'm not here to watch a movie. Let's look at what you see right when you finish the cutscene. The crickets of the night, the howls of the wind, the sparkles of the water. The sound design in this game is fucking amazing. It really immerses you in the world. It makes you feel like you're connected with everything. I mean, just take a look at this random sequence I chose from later in the game. Basically, every single thing you interact with or do in this game has a sound, which is a pretty impressive detail that solidifies the overall feel of the game. Now, sure, some of these sounds get... Some of these sounds, okay, in this game can get repetitive at times, but to be honest, I'm personally not too bothered by any of the sounds, including the laugh tracks. For some people, it gets on their nerves, I guess, but doesn't this just make it feel like you're playing in an episode of Scooby? It's such a simple thing to add, but it really solidifies the overall tone the game is giving you. Also, the music in this game. Can I hear that level music one more time? Every track in this game feels so right. It fits into every level perfectly, whether it be a nice upbeat track to a crazy roller coaster ragtime thingy. The only problem I have with this game's music is that it's a bit too repetitive. Like, yeah, I know, it's a THQ game, and it can only do so much, but some of these tracks sound pretty similar to each other already, and they use one track for multiple levels. Sure, each of these tracks fit into the level seamlessly, but I just want more variety, man. All right, so now that we're in the game, why don't we go into the first level that's immediately unlocked, which is the playground. I mean, look at this place. A slide, a tire, a swing set, an ice rink? Oh, that doesn't seem safe. No wonder this place is haunted. Otherwise, all the kids would be here 24/7. But more importantly, this level has almost every type of platform and collectible in the game, making the tutorial very hands-off. It simply gives you a description, and you can test it out for as long as you like. You've got slippery slopes and surfaces, swings both on stationary and moving objects, falling platforms, and... tar. It also shows you the patterns in which you'll find snacks and introduces you to the monster tokens, which is the super special collectible in this game that we'll just talk about later. But anyway, let's get the hell out of here and actually get into the meat of the game. First of all, we now have enough snacks to pay our first snack gate. Snack gates are what make the snacks we've talked about so valuable, since they are essentially pay-to-win locks. The game forces you to collect snacks and traverse an area thoroughly before you can enter other levels. Now, on paper, this game can be classified as a Metroidvania because of this. Now, if you ever played Metroid or Castlevania, and there you go. You already know what I'm going to say. It's pretty obvious. Y'all aren't stupid. But if you don't play other video games like me, then let me catch you up to speed. Metroidvanias are games designed around exploration and non-linearity. You unlock new levels based on your exploration, and not just because you beat the previous level. So, like Metroid or Castlevania. So now that we're actually playing through the game and unlocking new levels, how good of a Metroidvania is this? Well, let's just speed through some of the events in this game and see if it has any characteristics of a Metroidvania. So we pay the snack gate and go talk to Holly, who gives us the map, which automatically shows us what order the levels are. Then we go down this hallway and see that there are these spider webs that block our path. Jesus, I heard webs are strong, but like, holy shit, these must be some huge ass spiders. Well, either way, it tells us we gotta go find an item that can break these spider webs, specifically the helmet. So now we go back outside and talk to this familiar looking fellow, and he gives us a shovel to a dog, I guess. I thought dog could just dig, but whatever, go off. We also see this key, which the game also tells us we need another item to get it and unlock the levels which the invention is the springs. Okay, so whatever. We dig a key, enter the dock levels, run through those, meet up with Shaggy, clear a path, pair a second snack gate. Then we go through the pier, get the springs, reach the key back at the mystery machine we couldn't reach before, and enter the hedge levels. Now we run through the... Wow, that is a huge ass spider. Hey, we're not kidding. Then we run through those, learn that Shaggy cannot drive for shit, go into the greenhouse and through the hills, where eventually we reach the helmet, which we can now use to break the spider webs from earlier. And it's all come full circle. Okay, so when do I actually explore like you do in a Metroidvania? I mean, I go through these levels and I don't know what to expect, which is a kind of exploration, but I haven't really had like a choice in where to go. And these items I get only unlock one thing at a time, which they explicitly told me it would do. I'm not really exploring a world, am I? I'm taking a tour of the Haunted Mansion. So if I can only go to specific levels at certain times with these specific items that unlock certain levels, then it's kind of hard to think that you're, really exploring a world with branching paths and shit. Instead, what you're doing is being forced to figure out, or rather remember, where you have to go next, as opposed to where you could go next. In fact, if you just put all these particular levels right next to each other in the same order we have to go through, it wouldn't change your experience with the game at all, except instead of having to look around for a minute or two and remember where to go, you don't have to look around for a minute or two and remember where to go. Whoop-de-doo. And this is where I will say one of my hot takes. I don't really think it's right to classify this game as a Metroidvania, since this game doesn't really focus on the same game design as an actual Metroidvania. When you look at these games from the surface level, they seem the same. You bounce around at different levels and different parts of the map to collect new items to unlock more levels and backtrack in the game. But when you think about how each game actually does these actions, they're completely different. First of all, this game doesn't even have an option on anything. There aren't multiple places you can go with something you've newly unlocked. When you get the springs, you have to go to the hedge maze. When you go to get the helmet, you have to go to the manor. For every single item, they don't enhance your gameplay to promote exploration. They just use it as a glorified key. In this case, this game doesn't even reward exploration. If this game encouraged you to explore, then why would they have thousands of Scooby snacks throughout the whole game? Wouldn't they just make it so that the total minimum is the combined value of the snack gates? When you collect monster tokens, you don't get a new item or a secret boss fight. You backtrack with an item here and just leave. There aren't any secret upgrades you get either. Every upgrade is literally in front of your face. What's worse is that these upgrades don't even upgrade anything because they're the last two items of the whole game. You don't even get anything for 100%ing the game. All you get is Donut saying congrats, which, I mean, he's my homie, but come on, man, I need something more. But the big thing this game really rewards you for is remembering things. If you remember that the webs can be broken with the helmet, then you are rewarded by accessing the rest of the levels. If you remember where a monster token is that you need an item to go back for, then you get a fun Easter egg in the monster gallery. If you collect all the snacks in one area, then you get to see a cool BTS concept art. And sure, Metroidvanias have this type of remember for reward aspect too, but it's not the sole focus of its gameplay. Now let me be very clear. I'm not even saying this game not being exploration based or linear is a bad thing, because it's really not. Linear games are still super fun and in some cases the most successful games. A game being linear isn't an insult. But when people call this a Metroidvania game, well, of course you think that, because it's not a Metroidvania. This game has elements of a Metroidvania, but to solely call it a Metroidvania doesn't sit right when you look at the game more thoroughly. And I think it's important to clarify this stance as we continue to look at Frights. Okay, so now let's actually talk about the level design in this game. If you were impressed with the tutorial level for this game, then, I don't know, you'll be pleased, I guess. This game's level design is overall pretty impressive. Most levels feel unique, with each of them having some sort of theme or setting and giving you a great platform experience with the items you have currently unlocked most of the time, or are set around specific mechanics of the game. In the beginning of this game, you can't really even kill basic enemies, and combined with tons of obstacles and jump scares, you learn to be aware of your surroundings, which is what every platformer should do. By the way, I just want to point out the random textures in some versions of this game. Look at that kid. There's just a random girl right there. That painting doesn't look quite right. The levels also somewhat evolve as the game goes on. In the first levels of the game, you start with levels that are generally a straight line through. You just run and jump on solid ground. Not much shit to worry about. Then the levels evolve into offering more platforming between the beginning and the end of the level. Like, take a look at these levels from the beginning of the game. Pretty straightforward. Kind of just run it down. But more importantly, it gives you a less controlled environment for experiencing moving platforms and obstacles. Now, let's take a look at this level way later in the manor levels. This behemoth. Look at all the platforming aspects you got going on here. Trampolines, moving platforms, hangable objects, slippery segments, and a wide range of enemy types. Now there are some lazy ass levels that I'll be talking about later, but this is so much fun. It feels like an actual adventure you and Scooby are going on. Now you might be thinking to yourself, did he just say enemy types? He must mean the different characters that the enemies are. And if you thought that, you're wrong. Silly bastard. See, there's only a few different types of enemies in this game. There are enemies that just walk back and forth, enemies that follow you when they notice you, that shoot stuff when they notice you, and then enemies that can die in 1 or 2 hits. There are also these guys that just pop in your head, but whatever. Now, most of the enemies kind of mix and match the movement and health thing. For example, the zombie and creeper are the same, in which they notice and chase you, but the creeper needs an extra hit to kill it. Now, this might seem lazy to do this to enemies, but I honestly don't think it's as big of a problem, since most of the time you are more so excited to see the enemies from the Scooby-Doo show being in the game, rather than how it's exactly fit in within the game's design and environment. However, it is still kind of a problem, because as you collect items and upgrade your moves, it changes how you interact with enemies. And if all the enemies are the same, then there you go. The way you interact with them is all the same. Why get an item that can sneak past enemies when I could just kill them with my power-ups? There's technically never a reason to kill any enemy in this game. You just run straight past them before they even notice you. Why have a stealth option if it's slow and worthless? And then there's some moments where it's kind of just like a bukkake with all the enemy spam. Like, holy shit. How many headless specters and witches will you put in 1 level? You use the Geronimo in like 2 levels. Why not use them a little bit more? There's also some enemies that are literally spammed throughout the whole game, like this fish thing. God, this is the worst enemy in the game, because you can't even feel nostalgic for it. Like, who remembers Scooby-Doo and then goes and remembers this fuck? And if you really remember them, then you would know that this is actually supposed to be the creepy heap from the deep, not the sea creature. But anyway, the manor levels easily have the worst enemy spam, and most of the other levels in the game don't generally have this problem. But when it does show up, it's definitely noticeable. It's also worth mentioning that there are some unique enemies in the game too. Most of these only show up at the end of the game anyway, like the Space Kook and the Funland robots. The Space Kooks can respawn, follow you, and hurt you short and long range. Meanwhile, the robots can only be defeated by knocking them down first and hitting them from above. Ghosts are also a unique, although very overused, enemy that for 75% of the game, you can't even do anything with them. They are invincible, and later on, you finally get items to use on these guys as platforms, and actually interact with them in a different way, which I'll discuss later. So yeah, I got sidetracked with enemies there. But most enemies are fun to see, since all these characters and creatures are classic Scooby-Doo villains, and it's fun to see them just walking around in a level. It kind of sucks that you just can't do more with them. And back to this game's level design. Level design in this game is overall pretty praiseworthy, and if I wanted to, I could go level by level, literally explaining how good most of these levels are. But remember when I was talking about most levels thematically feeling unique? Remember when I said most? I mean, just take a look at these 2 random levels I chose. Would you believe me that these 2 levels are part of different groups of levels? Because they are. You can tell some of these levels were obviously more focused on than others, and the levels they actually focused on are pretty good, pretty memorable. But then you have these levels where they just kind of look the same. It's like they didn't know what to do or put in between at the end of some of these levels, and they just made a quick, simple level on the fly. I mean, look at every level I've shown you while I'm talking. They all look the same. Wait, actually, okay, let's talk about the level naming for a second here. Most of the level names are kind of puns that also rhyme, which is kind of cute. Again, something that the original show used to do. All Scares Upstairs, Little Lab of Horrors, Going Down Which Way? Amazing. tremendous. What's better is that these levels listed also fit with what the level actually entails. In which way? There are quite literally many different ways in which you could go. There are no witches though. But then you got coast for some ghosts? There aren't even any ghosts in these levels. And this isn't really what I'd call a coast. If anything, this looks more like a berth. Who's Yella in the cellar? Or like, what the hell are you trying to spella? Favor your timber, Scooby? Okay. Now you're not even trying anymore. But this is nitpicky stuff. The bigger problem with level naming is that sure, the levels themselves are cute, but do you actually remember their names? Like, all these levels are in parts, so the only distinctive feature for organizing the levels is just calling them different parts. Like, there are some moments where you have to backtrack and you just have no clue where the hell to go sometimes. Because when you look at this pasta dish of a map, it doesn't give any indication on where to go other than the names of the level, which doesn't help you when you don't remember which part was what. I think naming the levels this way is actually a lot more harmful than one would think, because if you want the levels to stand out and be memorable for a longer period of time, then you should have a better way of naming levels. This just feels lazy. And because of this, it makes the game harder to traverse and less memorable, because who's gonna say, oh, my favorite level is Gloom and the Doom Down in the Tomb Part 3. No, stupid, you're just gonna say the Green Ghost boss fight. Oh, the boss fights in this game are actually pretty fun through and through, by the way. You get to see the most classic Scooby ghouls in the best way possible. But here's the thing, the bosses are RNG, and they do feel pretty similar to one another. Except Redbeard, he just has enemy waves. Most of these bosses are just waiting to press a button or something to that extent when the boss does thing you want it to do in order to be. You just gotta hit this button. There's another one. There's a, oh, never mind. Gonna stand here now. Oh, these buttons are vertical now. Okay, this isn't very hard to do. This game is using the classic technique of using waiting as a difficulty supplement. The longer it takes to do something, the harder it seems to be, even if it's really not. But these fights itself are still so memorable, mainly because they chose the most memorable characters from the show. You got the Black Knight, the original Scooby-Doo villain. You got the giant enemy Green Ghost, Redbeard the pirate, and obviously the Mastermind. I feel like this is fan service done well, which honestly gives you a sense of wonder throughout the game. Wondering what's going to happen next or what item you're going to unlock is a key part about this game being so entertaining. Yeah, sure, this game's linear, but you still don't know exactly what's up ahead until you've unlocked it. So while obvious in retrospect what the boss fight's going to be, your first playthrough you have no idea what's in store, and it could be any character you haven't seen yet. Literally from the moment you boot up the game, you see these demos and wonder when you'll get to that point or when you'll unlock that power-up, and it could be at any time for all you know. So essentially this game is very good for one casual playthrough, but in terms of playing it again, it doesn't feel the same. There's a shift in how you perceive the world around you. Instead of wondering what's next, you'll probably just want to get to the fun levels later in the game or whatever. Speaking of how the player and environment interaction is handled in this game, wow, that is the nerdiest thing I think I've ever said. Oh God, what am I doing with my life, man? Anyway, now it's time to bring up the inventions. We've already talked about how these inventions unlock new levels or parts of a level, but what else do they do? So most of these inventions solely enhance on Scooby's own platforming, and that includes the springs, galoshes, plungers, umbrella, bubblegum, and the soap. The springs are the double jump, so obviously they're useful. I would expect this from a game that is considered a platformer. Why put the invention that allows Scooby to jump in a level that is designed to prevent you from jumping? The tar in this game is stupid. It's a device the game uses to limit the player of what they can do in a level, whether that be so they can't go to another level early or just make the level more challenging. But the tar is never really used in the more challenging way. It's only used to act as another key to a level sort of thing, like the webs in the helmet from earlier. What's different is that they heavily underuse this feature, since after the first boss fight, you're given the galoshes, which essentially negates the effect of tar, which is useless considering how after the pier levels, you never see tar again. Why make a limiting factor in your game and then completely remove it immediately for just like a few things? What's the point in coding this? When you get the galoshes, it's such a weird word. Galoshes? Galoshes. You're not even halfway through the game. Why are you wasting my time with bullshit, goopy nonsense? The plungers serve almost the exact same purpose by being able to go up slippery slopes, but the difference is that this can be integrated into a level more seamlessly, and they actually fucking use it. But this invention isn't safe from being flawed, because this invention only works on specific floors for some reason. If what the plungers do what they say, why do Scooby still slide on slippery platforms? What about these boats? They are literally slippery slopes. Why shouldn't they work here? At least with the galoshes, they work wherever there's tar, right? Bruh. What's the point of making an invention that only works sometimes? It's like having a knife and saying you can cut and eat the sandwich, but not the steak. It's like, what the hell, man? What the hell? What's the point? I'm getting hungry. Okay, let's talk about like an actual good power-up again. The umbrella. This invention is simple. It allows Scooby to float and glide. This not only works as a sort of balloon trip kind of thing, it also allows the player to platform with more precision. This allows for levels like this to exist. Remember this shit? Does this give you PTSD? Yeah, you could thank the umbrella for this level. It's pretty heavily implied that this level is specifically meant for you to utilize the umbrella and float around to everything. So it's on you to land on the right spot. But to be fair, the camera in this game, well, it's something. See, you can go back and forth on whether the camera in this game is good or really bad. Because when it works, it's actually not that bad. It's pretty flipping good. Damn, look at this clean platforming. But on the other hand, you get levels like this, where depth perception is integral for you completing the level. Sure, the umbrella helps, but when you use the invention correctly and still get punished for it because you just couldn't see it correctly, then it feels unfair. It doesn't feel like you completed a level because you did it. It just sometimes feels like you had a little luck on your side. Nah, but actually you guys suck. Get wrecked. Anyway, the camera in this game is usually pretty good, especially for it being automatic, but it certainly has its moments where it could be better. If they remake this game, they should probably make a controllable camera though, crossing my fingers. Anyway, side tangent over, let's talk about the gum and the soap, because come on guys. These are the same item. If you want to talk about out-of-place items, then bring out these bad boys, because wow, WTF is the point of these things. Now, the concept of these items are actually pretty cool, since it allows you to platform on enemies, which completely changes the relationship between the enemy and the player. Instead of going into a level and immediately killing every enemy you see, you have to take a step back and think about how you can actually traverse through the level. But guess what they didn't do? That right there. Instead, they only use these items for very specific purposes to unlock levels. Also, the soap is way better than the gum since you can stand on the bubble for a duration of time and double jump off of it rather than the enemy acting as like just a trampoline. Either of these inventions had incredible potential, and I think if they put this item earlier in the game, like before you can even double jump, it would have been way more interesting. Now that I'm talking about this, they really underuse a lot of the inventions in this game, which kind of sucks. Like, am I really gonna talk about the costumes now? They don't even do anything if half the enemies in this game don't even chase after you. I mean, I feel that a lot of these inventions were really good ideas with incredible potential, but they just never design levels in ways that really adhere to what these inventions are really capable of. I mean, to beat the final boss, you only need like 2 items that you get before the second of the total 4 boss fights. You could beat the final boss without any of the items from 60% of the game, bro. These 2 items are the last ones yet to be discussed, which are the helmet and the super smash. These items are pretty identical, but how they make you see combat is completely different. The helmet allows you to kill an enemy, break things from the side, and press horizontal buttons. The super smash allows you to kill an enemy, break things from above, and push most vertical buttons. There are like 4 buttons you could press with that super smash. I don't know why. Don't even get me started. Now, the reason why these 2 impact combat so differently is because one is on the ground and one is in the air. When you charge in the ground, you slowly increase in speed, which can make you move faster in the game, but it also means you need to take a lot more caution when traversing through a level. If you miss your target or lose control, you can fall off or die. This is especially the case when the area around you is cramped or when the floor is slippery. Also on slippery floors, you can only charge right when you land on the surface, which is really stupid and nitpicky, but whatever anyway. On the flip side, the Super Smash gives you much better control of Scooby's attack with much less risk. When Scooby is in the air, he owns the place, and the only threat to you is if you just miss the attack. But then that aspect gets completely removed when you upgrade to the Supersonic Smash, because then it just makes them dizzy and completely removes the threat. So why the hell am I even talking about this? Oh yeah, because sure, the helmet is useful for hitting those gosh darn buttons, but the only way you would truly want to ever interact with an enemy in this game is with the Super Smash, which to be honest kind of sucks, because it gets kind of old killing all these enemies in the exact same way that are supposed to be different to some degree. Overall, the inventions in this game are either overused or not used enough, which leaves the gameplay feeling very unbalanced. The player level interactions are very limited, which obviously isn't intended. I mean, look at how much gum and soap you have. What? These upgrades are sprinkled everywhere in the game, and these are the last 2 items, man. These things don't even matter. What hurts even more is that the answers to these problems are already in the game, but they just put these inventions at the end of the game when it is just too late. Now, it sounds like I've been shit talking, and while that's true, what was I saying? The thing is, again, I feel like this is much more noticeable on multiple playthroughs, because when you're going through the game, you're still kind of wondering what could possibly be next, or what cool characters you're going to see, which, I mean, that's not an excuse of how the game is actually designed, but if the game is still enabling you to continue to play it with the overused and underused level mechanics, and you're still having fun and it feels engaging, then is it really that bad? I mean, I didn't think about any of this stuff until I speedran it for like 2 years. Personally, that's just me. We'll call that another hot take. Okay, I think it covered all the gameplay. Thank God. Don't get me wrong, I love this game and I love playing it. Like, I love playing it a lot. But talking about the gameplay can sure get me riled up. Anyway, what else is there to talk about? Boss fights, power-ups, red scratch, cultural stereotypes. The story?
If you ask me, someone's playing a nasty trick.
Okay, I can't even sugarcoat this one, guys. The story in this game is a flippin' travesty. I mean, who do you think you're fooling? Like, I'm gonna just say the whole thing right now, because when you think about this, it makes 0 sense. Like, what's the villain's plan here? Holly's a bad guy, right? She caused all this. So her plan was to kidnap her uncle, terrorize the cove, the graveyard, and the manor, to blame her uncle for it, so she could have all his and make a fortune. Okay. That doesn't sound like the worst plan, I guess. Maybe you could have gone for something a little more subtle, like make it look like he hasn't paid his taxes or something. And to be honest, with a house like this, he probably hasn't. So she causes all this terror, and instead of seeing any policemen, or even like fucking Batman or something, the only people who come to investigate is Mr. Ink. And they were asked to come by Holly. So Holly then decides it'd be a good idea to kidnap all of them. And then she expects someone / Scooby to save them all, which he does, by the way. So thank for that. Imagine if he drowned here, or fell here, or vaporized in acid here. Anyway, then they would immediately point the blame on the professor, since they had seen Holly with them when the monsters were afoot. So, to recap her plan, kidnap her uncle, ask private detectives to literally investigate her own crimes that relate specifically to previous cases of theirs, then kidnap them, have them escape and explore a little bit, and then they would for sure see it was the uncle's doing. This plan is so unbelievably bad, I cannot even begin to quantify it.
Well, it was a good plan.
Shut up, Fred. Why would you invite these people to investigate the monsters? Because you're a big fan? If you're such a big fan, I think you forgot the most important thing about these guys. They're good at what they do. They literally win every single time. She literally just gave herself away because she hired the only people that could get the right answer. And why would she assume this could work anyway after they accused him? What evidence would there even be for the professor? And you know what everyone else does when she gets called out and admits to doing all this shit? They just laugh it off. Everyone just laughs it off like, all's well that ends well, or whatever. Kidnapping your uncle and your friends as well as haunting the entire estate. LMAO, guys. Am I right? Come on, right? Okay. But here's the thing. As stupid as this plot seems, it still has that Scooby-Doo charm. Like, the dialogue between the gang is just so gosh darn endearing, especially after the first 3 boss fights. It just is actually pretty funny, and it honestly doesn't ever get old for me. I mean, god damn it, I just love this game. It's just so charming and nostalgic, not just for the game, but for the shows and the movies. Like, remember when you finally beat the Manor and you finally beat the Black Knight? That fight was so freaking suspenseful because they didn't like tell you how to beat it or anything, even though it's RNG, but you still feel like you had something to do with where he went. And then you get to watch a funny cutscene and the galoshes are banana flavored and you finally got to the fishy levels after being teased for like the whole time. Remember when you got the Super Smash after seeing it in the demos for so long? Remember when you got to a level in one of the demos and you're like, holy shit, I'm here now? Remember when you see the green ghost for the first time and the mastermind goes like, hey, in this cutscene? Dude, did you know that Tim Curry, aka the original It Clown, aka Dr. Frankenfurter, aka Professor Clamati, aka the Goblin King, aka this guy, I guess? Well, he's the freaking mastermind. And Don MF Knotts is in this freaking game. What a legend. There's a whole speedrunning category for him for a reason. I just love this. I just love this game, guys. I can't hold it in. It may sound like I complain this whole video, which I am, but it's because I want to see a new Scooby game based off of this similar design. Because this has so much potential to be even better or even just a remaster. This game has its flaws, but I think that the pros heavily outweigh the cons. Literally, if they just switched the order in which you get an item, I think this game would be even more fun. Or like 100% of the game. I didn't even really bother talking about that because there's no reward. Why do you not have like a dope secret boss after collecting all the monster tokens? Or maybe when you collect all the Scooby snacks in an area, you could exchange your snacks for item upgrades. Lean into those Metroidvania elements a little more if you're gonna put some in. But this game is still super fun, and I think it's a main reason why, and why I think some of these Heavy Iron games did so well for the time. And it's that they heavily leaned into the source material. Most of the time when you pick up an IP game, you just feel like bland or awkward. Like, the reason why you buy these games at the end of the day is to play as your favorite character and be part of the adventure. And this game did that perfectly. Even with all these problems I listed about some of these items only being used as keys or the combat being one-sided most of the time, it still felt natural. It still felt like you were going around, finding all your friends, having fun, and solving a mystery. It's what helped this game make millions of dollars. I mean, I don't know if that's a lot for a game. I'm just a broke college student, man. Hell, this game's engine and assets helped construct all these other games that you probably know. This game is the OG. Not that it makes this game better, but you know what I mean. So now that I'm done, and I spent 800 million years writing this freaking video, I think this game is a little dated, but it still holds up pretty damn well. If you want to replay this for nostalgia, or play a game that's got good old early 2000s vibes, or you just love the Scooby-Doo franchise, give this game a chance. You won't regret it. It's just a simple, fun time, and it deserves so much more love. And normally this is where people rate the game, and I didn't really want to do that because my feelings for this game are just really clouded on my website. I don't really think